The single most significant event in the history of Thra is undoubtedly the arrival of the 18 urSkeks. Of course, there are many more important events which take place throughout the ages, but it all started with the urSkeks taking control of this planet's existence. So, here is a very interesting notion. What if many more of them had come? What if, instead of 18 urSkeks, there were 1800 or even 18,000? What would happen? How would history change? After they established themselves as the bringers of light and knowledge, the urSkeks actually led quite a peaceful existence with the inhabitants of Thra, teaching them many things and coddling their love for truth, progress, and nature. It wasn't until Darkheart's famous tainting of the crystal which led to the Skeksis' creation and their vicious, cruel reign. But what would have happened if there were thousands of urSkeks, perhaps an entirely new population? The first thing we have to consider is that if there were more urSkeks, they likely arrived to overtake Thra, not as an invasion, but as ambassadors to the universe. The 18 that arrived originally were outcasts, banned from their home world, but in this theory we're suggesting that perhaps their entire race arrived on the planet, and through that, Thra may have fallen under their rule completely. If the urSkeks were peaceful, they would rule side by side with important figures like Aughra, and they would have no need to return, no desire for their home planet, because they came here for a reason, to live a brand new life. So therefore, there would be no Darkheart situation, because there would be no longing for home. So, instead of his disastrous actions taking place, the urSkeks may have simply existed and lived in peace with all the people of Thra, continuing to act as teachers, philosophers, and spiritual advisors. However, there is still a possibility that Darkheart would exist, because regardless of the circumstance, Thra is not their home world, it is foreign to them, so it may be possible that a character like Darkheart would remain in the ranks, and upon the Great Conjunction may have turned not 18, but perhaps thousands of urSkeks into both Skeksis and Uru, creating a brand new population of strange creatures. And the result of this would be chaotic and quite catastrophic, because each of the urSkeks would split into two beings, meaning that if, say, 20,000 urSkeks had arrived, they would create 40,000 individual beings. And instead of the mystics being able to hide themselves away, well, it would be impossible to remain hidden now. And instead of the Skeksis ruling through fear, they could simply rule by sheer force of number and unbridled kingship. The Skeksis' rule would most likely see an immediate rise to power, by not one, but perhaps many different factions. Think about all the new types and titles, the positions, the individual roles they would play. This would create an environment similar to Game of Thrones, exposing many different types of politics, agendas, and even bizarre relationships which would continuously turn the tide and rewrite history. Just imagine, instead of the Skeksis ruling as a small order from one central location, there were literal kingdoms, perhaps hundreds of them, depending on the numbers, spread all throughout the land, with each controlling individual clans and territories. And the same exact notion also applies to the Uru. With so many of them now, no doubt they would set up political and spiritual orders to maintain some semblance of a peaceful, nature-oriented civilization. And, without a doubt, many battles and wars would surely rage. However, now unable to sink into the shadows, the Uru would be forever exposed, without the protection of small numbers. This may lead to many different kingdoms of the Uru, but my guess is that they would most likely be hunted to extinction. I mean, think about all of the Skek malls there could be. The Uru are slow, humble, and peaceful, and aside from a few skilled warriors, I don't think that they could match the Skeksis' might. Of course, that doesn't mean that the Uru are completely weak. As we all know, the Uru have very powerful ways of defending and protecting themselves, so the possibility of many battles between the two forces is very likely. But if I had to give a final answer, I would say that the Uru's story would go much like the Macrack's. Unable to stay in this environment, the remaining population would eventually set out for new lands, across the oceans or deep into unknown countries. And perhaps Roundup would have led them instead, and set up a kingdom of his own under his leadership. The final important point we need to take into consideration is the population of the Gelfling, which would also no doubt increase over time. With the surge of the new inhabitants, all of the Skeksis and Uru alike would require the assistance of the Gelfling, either as allies or as slaves, and through this, more clans would spring forth, with brand new civilizations and new territories, mapping and building great cities all across every imaginable space on the map, evolving, or perhaps devolving Thra into a metropolis, with manufacturing, trade, work, and military taking the place of everything natural. Well, my friends, those are all of my theories. Now it's time for you guys to leave your thoughts and ideas down below in the Great White Void. Tell me what you think about the possibility of more urSkeks and what it would mean to the history of Thra. As always, until next we meet, take care, for Thra, for Jim, and I'll see you guys back here for the next video very soon.